NRG was one of the most dangerous teams in the world. The core made several international events where they terrorized teams from LATAM, Brazil, EMEA, and Pacific. They were one of the most consistent teams in the landscape of Valorant. 2024 would look like one of the best iterations since the Optic days. To understand how this team was formed, we need to go back to 2023 and 2024's offseason. FNS and Som had just left to become streamers on Twitch. Artist was labeled the double agent as he lacked the fragging presence he had in previous years with FPX. All that was left was Crashies and Victor, the duo that was given much credit for the success of Optic and the limited success that NRG had the previous year. The in-game leader role, our IGL, the controller role, and the entry frag role were left vacant. In free agencies, the smoke role was immediately filled with the addition of Marved, who was a legendary player at his role in 2022 and was often regarded as one of the best controllers alongside DRX's Mako. Plus, he had been part of the Optic Gaming core with Crashies and Victor back in 2022. Ethan had just been signed to play with NRG alongside Demon 1, as both had just won Valorant Champions 2023 with Evil Geniuses. The team almost had it all. Crashies was regarded as one of the best initiators in the game, Marv was a top controller, Victor was the flex player, Ethan was an esports veteran, and Demon 1 was at the peak of his career. With 3 Masters winners and 2 Champions winners, this was supposed to be a super team in the making. So what happened to the kings of North American Valorant? And what caused this super team iteration of NRG to miss out on several international events? NRG have been praised for the majority of their time this season, and I think one of the main reasons is because of their strength of schedule. At kickoff, they faced a newly formed Furia roster, who had just lost their best player in DG Zine, and a variation of the C9 roster that underperformed so much that they made roster moves right away. The playoffs at the kickoff event had them playing against Sentinels, which despite going 3 maps and being a close match at first, they ultimately lost. Sentinels had been preparing for this tournament for months now. An important aspect of the loss was the fact that NRG, when beaten, lost mostly because of the attack round. NRG lost 67% of rounds on Sunset, and went 1-11 the first half of Split, where they attacked first. While people were disappointed that NRG messed out on Madrid, the format of kickoff really hurt NRG, and this match versus Sentinels was single elimination. And even then, we got a really solid match, so fans and critics didn't say much about the loss. If anything, there was a lot of praise at Sentinels for the way that they prepared during the offseason. One of the things said about NRG was the fact that Chet and Ethan didn't seem to be on the same page when it came to map bans, allowing Sentinels to play on their home map of Split, which led to a catastrophic finish for NRG. Another factor that wasn't talked about enough was that NRG had less than a month to get ready due to Evil Genius's contract jail, where players like Demon 1, Ethan, Com, and Boostio were not allowed to explore their options until someone bought their contracts out. Leviatan, who had Com, and 100 Thieves, who had Boostio, all lost in group stage, and NRG, who had Demon 1 and Ethan, would be the only ones to make playoffs, in which they ultimately lost. Fan anticipation for all these teams was still high, but NRG would be the only team in which people said was a guarantee to work out when given proper time to prepare.
This is a team that's barely had a month of prac. You know, just over a month at this point when they're playing. Just over a month of prac, and they're playing like this. I think their ceiling is so fucking high. They just need a bit more time to cook as well.
NRG would face Loud in week 1. Loud had been in a very unfortunate situation where after Masters Madrid, they were stuck in Northern Ireland for weeks, as they were trying to get their visas renewed, and because of the Easter holiday, the embassy in Northern Ireland would be closed for an entire week. Loud were stuck until 48 hours before the match. When Loud arrived, it was the day of the match and had no practice, no sleep, and no fighting chance. NRG would beat Loud 2-0. But when you watch the first map, NRG doesn't play like a disciplined roster. Nothing shows this more than the round where they managed to isolate fight and enable Les to win a 3v1.
Taking for a little while, he's a lot of targets to deal with. That's not been halved. Time is of the essence. He's gotten it down to 1v1! And Les delivers for Loud again!
The exhaustion from the players would show towards the end of the match, and everything after the second half of the first map would fall apart for Loud. They would only win 5 rounds for the rest of the game. NRG would beat a team that wasn't even prepared to play, and somehow for an entire half made them look like the longtime rivals they have always been. NRG on week 2 would face against a Furia team that changed their rosters once more. To add context to how lowly this team was, that Furia roster would end the split with a 0-5 record, only winning 2 maps total. NRG wiped the floor with them, 13-2 on Split and 13-8 on Breeze. NRG's social media management would then go on a dead speedrunning channel that they used to run and post the match between NRG and Furia. And surely this would not come back and bite them in the ass later, right? NRG would get 2 easy wins, but their first real test would come in the form of Leviatan. Leviatan were coming off a win against the World Champions in Sentinels, where Aspas set the single map kill record. NRG on attack would not be able to get more than 2 rounds against Leviatan, making their attack conversion 16%. Demon 1 on Raze did not work. You can see this in the first kill first death ratio going 2 for 12, and nothing NRG does is helpful enough to set Demon 1 for success. Let's take a look at round 3, where NRG have used Dizzy to establish presence on A site. Marved hears the satchels by Aspas pushing up mid, so NRG decides that rotating for B site after baiting utility is the move. NRG walked to B site, giving Leviatan enough silence to make an educated guess to the rotate, and they all moved their players back to B site. To give you a clue of how slow they went, from the entrance of B main, the second they want to run their execution, they waste 20 seconds to move up and utiled up Leviatan. Aspas, off the tick of the orb, throws a nade to slow down NRG's push even more, and a smoke and aftershock follow. NRG are all pressed at the entrance as they are now down to 45 seconds. Rotating is not an option. Texas aftershock placement forces Crashies to abandon his ult, which they have invested so much time into getting, and now a fault line has stopped Ethan, Demon 1, and Victor from playing entry and wasting more time. While all of this is happening, Marved has made 0 presence in mid to create any pressure and is somehow still looking for the flank despite Victor having a trip on flank. By the way, before Crashies uses his utility, he threw the spike in with 0 space gain, which is a cardinal sin to any Gecko player. 2 flashes go out, and Aspas shoots the Dizzy, while Ethan flashes Mazzino at most. King trades Ethan. Demon 1 misses a satchel, Ethan swings out wide, Aspas kills Demon 1 mid-air, and Mazzino flashes the B pillar, and then when the rest of the team is flooding out, Mazzino gets a kill on Victor. Leviatan's Gizzy gets Crashies, Marv attempts to play second entry, Crashies dies, and Marv gets sprayed down. It's an absolute disaster in communications from top to bottom. Yes, plays like Mazzino's and Tex were really good, but NRG taking eons to push onto site, miscoordination with Marved, lack of utility baiting, or even a hint of pressure on mid allowed Leviatan to stall NRG enough to deny a plant, and Flash to hold site. This lack of setup or any semblance of teamwork on attack would result in Demon 1 going 0 for 7 in first kills to first deaths on attack. And if you don't believe me, look at round 4, where NRG does the exact execute, but properly this time and with lesser guns.
This is a big test for them to figure out if they actually understand how to close out maps when they get in the advantage.
4 stingers invested for the attack side.
They just hit.
Both flashes out, Demon 1's lit up, and Aspas just has his way with them. All those stingers are still up though, and if the plan is to go fast and aggressive, they're doing so. The spike has been planted, they've created some space, even upgraded 2 weapons. And it might be getting worse. Mazzino falls, King follows suit.
Round 7, 8, 9, and 10 would be identical in terms of ideology. Bind would be even worse for NRG, as they would only get the final round, matching their record of an 8% conversion since facing Sentinels at kickoff. Let's take a look at round 10. Crashies jump peaks to spot Viper on B side. Off this spot, King, Aspas, and Tex both rotate, while NRG have started their own rotation. Off of this sound cue, they should know that there's only one person on A side, and the most disruptive agent in Viper is not the one on that side. So it's safe to say that a quick execute would be the right call, correct? Well, not for NRG. Demon 1, Ethan, and Marved are all still staring at the push on the flank. Meanwhile, Aspas and Tex have cleared hookah and read that NRG are about to hit A site. The spike has to be given to Crashies, and guess what? Crashies has no wingman. Mazzino maintains control of U-Haul, and as Leviatan floods onto the site, U-Haul is haphazardly cleared by Demon 1 as Mazzino kills him. He then finds Victor, and finally Ethan trades out Mazzino. And we're down to a 3v3. Marv is still watching flank, and he ults to ensure the round. Aspas gets Crashies. The smoke goes down as Leviatan have figured out that the rest must be in U-Haul off of the trades with Ethan. They push the pit further, and Aspas snaps on Marv and Ethan to end the round. Where is the communication? It's small things like Crashies not having wingman, not communicating that Ace Out is now suddenly open, not asking for a flash on U-Haul against Mazzino, and other small nuances that bring this team down. Once again, this isn't to discredit Leviatan. Leviatan know that when Aspas and Tex have TP'd, NRG are either pushing hookah to flood onto B, or this is a diversion to go A. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. NRG got 8 rounds across 2 maps. In a twist of irony, this would also establish Leviatan as the super team, as Aspas continued to show that he isn't a flash in the pan duelist. NRG's next opponent would be MIBR, and much like other Brazilian teams, they had not won a single match. NRG would win both maps 13-9 on Split and 13-3 on Breeze, but the looming fact was NRG still had not beaten one good team. Week 4, NRG would have to face another team that had just gotten off an incredible win against Sentinels and Evil Geniuses. NRG would win the first 2 rounds and proceed to drop the rest of the half, ending it at 10-2. At this moment, everyone knew NRG were not a good team. With a 16% conversion rate on attack, things were not looking good. Demon 1, even on Jet, could not find a first kill, first death positive rate at 4-7, where his entry counterpart in Jajimo upstaged him with a 23-10-5 KDA and 5 first kills and 0 first deaths.
It's into your own hands here. A chance to really wrangle back Fate and Control. Crashies with the firing line. Making sure that nobody can really take it. Adjustments. Round 3! Jugamo! Goodness me, man!
Lotus would be a different story, as NRG found some success with the attack with 60% conversion rate, where Victor would be the savior of the map. This would be a map they would win. Unfortunately, their defense on Sunset would not hold up, and once again, without their only good half on gameplay, they would end up losing the match 11-13. I can speak as a fan that I was fuming when they lost to Evil Geniuses. That team was constructed out of 5 players that were picked up because of budgetary restrictions, and constructed the same time NRG was. And yet Potter was able to produce a team that, while started being bad, slowly found its stride. And yet NRG couldn't do the same with one of the most expensive rosters in VCT. Last week of America's Split 1, and NRG have to face 100 Thieves, who have been getting better and better. Cryo is back to being the gunslinger on the operator. Asuna has exponentially improved his game, and Bustio has brought this team the structure and vibes it needed. This isn't the average game for NRG either. If they win, they make playoffs, and if they lose, they miss another international event. It's do or die. NRG do a decent job on attack, and it's much more focused than in the past. They end the half at 7-5, but the individualistic play keeps showing as there are several rounds where 100 Thieves manage to kill these players despite not being able to defuse.
Just a spray.
Slow clears. Bustio with the first shot, and Victor is going to use that bait as the off-angle play, and Bustio seems like
He has an inkling. Slowly clearing out the corners, but that clock is not in the favor now of 100 Thieves. There's that first contact fake from Ethan, and there's shot from Lucio! Everybody's turning around now for 100 Thieves!
These issues would all return when NRG would only win one round on defense. Bind was not much different than the last time they played on it, completely clueless on how to attack. Defense, you could tell that the mental was chalked, and after winning pistols, they'd only get one round on defense, and the super team dreams were dead in the water. So many people, including myself, were disappointed that this team amounted to a whole lot of nothing, and managing to lose out on playoffs was a cherry on top of the shit cake considering how weak the Omega group was compared to the Alpha group. If we look at the underlying reason why NRG have struggled so much, it ends up being that their lack of a true IGL hurt them, especially on the attack side. On a macro scale, we see things are okay, as we can see they can overpower lesser teams like MIBR, Furia, or a Weakened Loud based purely on their aim. The same cannot be said about the teams they played with a winning record or a team that had won a previous match. Ethan has never in his Valorant career played the IGL role, aside from the short stint on 100 Thieves. On Evil Geniuses, Boostio was the IGL, and Ethan served a similar role to Crashies, and in the older version of NRG with EU, Som, Tex, and Hazed, he was not the IGL there either. Historically, Ethan is not equipped to be the IGL. Secondary caller? Maybe. His experience as a CS and original Valorant player doesn't really translate into being an IGL, and that's fine. Just because you have a history doesn't mean that you need to play that IGL role. This is not to call Ethan a bad player either, because he still shows that he has what it takes to frag out when asked. As an example, on Breeze vs MIBR, he went 19-6-2, and even in a bad game like Leviatan, he stayed positive with a 16, 14, and 7. So the criticism here isn't that he's a bad player, but a bad caller, if he truly is the main caller on the team. While this lies in the more speculative space of the breakdown, it's worth noting that Crashies and Victor are very vocal about how they want to play their game, and Marved had just exited a stint with Sentinels where he was also playing the IGL role for the team, so he might also be extremely vocal, which could lead to a clash in leadership amongst team members, where Ethan may not be seen as the de facto leader, much like FNS was. Again, this is my speculation, so take it with a grain of salt. Demon One is another person who's had issues with how this team is formed. His performances have been mild at best. Over the last 5 matches, he's only been the top fragger on his team once. While he has had some individual moments, almost any time he's asked to play Raze, it's a struggle to get him to frag out. Against Leviatan, he went 13-30, while Aspas, his Brazilian counterpart, went 34-15, the inverse. As highlighted in my previous segment, it's not entirely his fault, as his team does fail to set him up in certain aspects of entry. Another reason Demon One clashes with the members of this roster is the fact that while he's not particularly good at Raze, the team does have a very good Raze player, and that is Victor, who is used to that dive aspect of the game, playing a similar role to Jajimo for Demon One last year, but for Ye in Optic 2 years prior. The issue comes when Victor is on Raze and Demon One is asked to play a flex smoke. This brings an even bigger issue when Marved is the main smokes player, and nothing exacerbates this issue more than the composition on Lotus where Demon One was on Brim, Victor on Raze, and Marved on Cypher. To give you some context, NRG are hitting B site after playing a default. Marved attempts to lurk on C and is caught by Apoth's Cypher camp. A chase ensues to kill Marved as 2 players push him, and this is how out of his element Marved is.
Taman Superman is taking out Demon One. Marved, they're aware of the low possibilities, but again he has to take matters into his own hands. Double face, running him down now. Just trying to use the trips to slow them in their place, but where is the ending here for NRG?
Demon One, in addition to all of these issues with performance, has been speculated to have some struggles in his personal life, as highlighted by the tweet his fiancée made. To me, this is just a sophomore slump, and the lack of setup plus team coordination all add up to his performance issues. There is no better way of making your aiming potential irrelevant than having no team coordination. Crashies has had a difficult time on Gecko. In the 5 matches he's played the agent, we see his rating is much lower. He has more first deaths, a lower KPR, and a lower ACS compared to agents like Sova and Sky, where he shine much more. Marved, when it comes to playing smokes on Viper and Omen, does fairly well, but when asked to play anything else, he looks like a chicken with his head cut off. His performance on Cypher doesn't help his case. 17, 22, and 7, and it doesn't scream confidence at all. Victor might be one of the people I don't have an issue when it comes to this team. He is incredibly impactful and flexible on many roles. He plays Raised with a 308 ACS, Cypher with a high average combat score, and a high KAST percentage. Killjoy, and even some Brimstone, and while all his performances aren't amazing individually, this is the guy that you can rely on to be consistent. Chet and the coaching staff, given the situation this roster is in, have been given massive scrutiny for forcing Demon 1 on Raised, picking Split against Sentinels, and looking completely lost against Sentinels, Leviatan, Evil Geniuses, and 100 Thieves since the formation of this roster. NRG have poured an incredible amount of resources into their coaching staff, having 4 of them, and I will not pronounce their names as I will just end up butchering them. Regardless, NRG's form looked the same at kickoff than it did in Stage 1, and this is being generous with my assessment. The counter-stratting he is known for has been missing the entire year, especially against contender teams. His loss against Evil Geniuses and Sentinels are of note, and Sentinels had played Split several times, so there was plenty of footage to counter-strat. And in the regular season, it feels like NRG never has an upper hand against other teams that they lost to. NRG's roster might not work out, and it never boils down to one thing exactly. There is not one individual ruining this super team. It's an amalgamation of all these small issues that have brought this team to a reality that they're just average at best. These points of criticism aren't meant to be toxic. I don't want things like fat shaming stuff like Ice Cream Man or ranked insults like Diamond 1 be mixed in with the noise of proper criticism. Fixing the attack is the main issue, and that can't start unless we get one person to be the leader of the team, both in-game and outside the game, and these don't have to be mutually exclusive to one player. We see it way too much the way Zelsis and Boostio brought the vibes factor to the team. The IGLing, the stratting, the attack rounds, the minor role issues, the lack of any true chemistry, and the vibes have destroyed any semblance of what was once considered the kings of North American Valorant.